What's up everyone? Welcome back to Go-Kart Build video number 10, and in this video we're going to be continuing on with the fabrication process of various pieces of the go-kart. Last night was where we recorded video 9. We welded on all the tabs and made sure that all the pieces of tubing fit through nicely, and so today we're going to be actually welding on that tubing, cutting it, and then feeding the bolts through so the suspension arms can pivot on their own. And then we're going to go ahead and continue on with some different things, and I'll introduce those as they come. But for now, we're going to go ahead and weld these tubes onto the tabs. Alright, so we got the tube fitted through here. This is just one giant piece, and then we're just going to cut it after we weld it. But basically first on this side, we measured up 1/4 of an inch because that's the spacing we wanted. And then I'm going to go ahead and weld it here, and then get the suspension arm spaced properly, and then weld this to it, weld this side, and then we're going to go ahead and actually cut with the jigsaw, just cut it up. So that way, this allows the pieces to make sure that they're all in line with each other, and we don't, when we weld them, they're not like, you know, one's lined up this way and one's lined up that way. This is going to assure they're all lined up straight with one another.
You want some help with that? I can set that up for you.
Oh, it's okay, I got it. It's already gone.
Sweet.
Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and weld this side up. Okay. Alright, so I think we got that one welded up. And now it's just a matter of getting this proper spacing. So we need to have a 1/2 inch gap this side and a 1/2 inch gap this side. And then I'll go ahead and hold this in place and then weld it. Alright, so I got the caliper set to about a 1/2 inch. And I went ahead and checked the spacing in between the tab and the suspension arm. And it's just about right. It's not perfect, but it's not going to get much better than that, and 1/100th of an inch is pretty small of a distance. So we're going to go ahead and just weld this to here, and then once I weld the suspension arm to the middle, then we're just going to weld this side, and then, you know, just cut here, and then we'll have the suspension arm free. And the beauty is, since this is just round tubing, I don't have to assure that this stays flat or anything. This can just be at whatever angle, and it's still going to pivot properly. So I'm going to go ahead and weld this now.
That was so dumb of me. I looked right at it as you did it.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's fine. I've had that happen before. But hang on. Can I have that caliper? I'm doing some quick measurements here. Thank you.
That's 4 inches. Okay, I'm gonna do this side and then
I'd say it needs a solid like 0.6 inches on each side. So to be safe, I probably go with 3/4 inch.
Alright, so those are just the initial welds. They're by no means meant to be pretty or anything. So we just have to, I'm just going to measure a 1/4 inch on this side and then weld this side, and then we'll go ahead and cut this up. Alright everyone, so a little bit of an update. We had a little bit of an issue with cutting the metal tubing once we had welded it onto the suspension arm and frame. We were originally using my jigsaw that I have with a metal cutting blade, but that didn't work well, just because the jigsaw has to sit in a flat surface and it jumps around a lot, and that just didn't work. So what we had to do was go all the way back to Harbor Freight Tools and pick up one of these. So we got a Sawzall, otherwise known as a reciprocating saw, and with a metal cutting blade, and so this works a whole lot better. And in about 5 seconds you'll see me cutting through the metal tubing with this tool, and you'll know what I'm talking about. Alright, so I went ahead and marked off on here where I need to cut with a little bit of a red Sharpie line. I'm going to go ahead and use the Sawzall and just cut right through, straight as I can.
You want me to hold it?
Ready.
Yes, it is.
Okay, so now do the inner cut here. I gotta cut there. Sorry. Okay. And that's how it's done. So now we have a piece welded here, and a piece welded here. So now they're all perfectly aligned, and we're good to go. So now we just got to take the Dremel tool or the file and kind of clean them up a little bit. Alright everyone, so I'm going to kind of update you guys with what's been going on with all the fabrication. So basically, we have finished the front suspension arms, at least for now. So as you can see here, even though it's out of focus, this now pivots. So, and same thing with the other one. So, those are done, and then we have one of the back ones done. So that pivots now as well. And it's all bolted in. We got the threaded rod to go all the way through, and Will's just working on the last threaded rod. He just cut that up. And then once we finish this, I think we're going to move on to kind of making sure the axle is the right size. So what we're doing in terms of that is I bought a 1 1/4 inch wooden dowel rod, and we're going to cut it up to size and kind of size up the axle based on the U-joints and also the bearings. And so once we do that, we'll be good to go, and we might start on the cage, or the engine, or something else. But I'll probably update you guys when we're working on the axle stuff. Okay, so we got the wooden dowel rod in between the two bearings. So we got our suspension arm, as you can see. We mounted the bearing, and then we took the 1 1/4 inch dowel rod we picked up this morning and started feeding it through just to check the alignment to make sure these things line up properly. Now, the next step is to put these pieces like right here, because those are where the middle bearings are going to go, and then we'll figure out where we need to cut the dowel rod in order for it to pivot properly with the U-joints that are going to be about mounted right there. So that's the next step of what we're going to be doing. And Will's just tightening down this bearing right now because we got the alignment properly spaced here. So it's coming along. Alright everyone, so Will had to take off. He had to go do some other things this weekend, so I'm going to be continuing the videos of the build for this weekend. And what I've done so far is I've got the two pieces in the middle of the rear section of the go-kart mounted and welded, and then I went ahead and put the bearings on top of that, and I just actually slid the axle all the way through 3 of the bearings to see if they lined up perfectly, and they do, so I'm pretty happy to see that. Don't have to make any adjustments or anything at the moment. And from here, I'm just going to kind of cut a piece off of the dowel rod, and then I'm going to test that with the U-joint to see what sizing I need for the axles for the U-joint to fit on and pivot properly with the suspension arm. So I'm going to go ahead and show you guys that now. Alright, so here's the rear section of the go-kart, and what I have had time to do so far is basically we had the suspension arms already put together with the bearings on them. And what I did, and what Will started before he left, was we started welding this piece and this piece here, and then these allow the bearings to sit on, and they have holes that we already drilled with the drill press back in like video 7, I think, or something like that. But I went ahead and just took the rubber mallet and hit the mock axle all the way through, and so it lines up nicely with this one. And I know for sure that this suspension arm lines up with this suspension arm, so I'm assuming that all 4 of them should line up properly. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to back the axle out this way, and then I'm going to go ahead and cut a piece off, and then I'm going to see, okay, well, if I have the U-joint mounted right here, you know, what kind of piece do I need, what kind of sizing do I need to have it function properly. So I'm going to go ahead and do that now. Okay, so you guys just watched a little video of me discussing about how the axle is going to work with the rear suspension arm, and what I'm filming right now is actually the next day. After what I filmed just previously, I stopped filming but kept working that day because I ran into a few issues, and I thought I'd spend this short video clip right now catching you guys up on those issues before I start fabricating again. And basically the first issue was when I was talking about backing out that wooden dowel rod with the rubber mallet to adjust the axle size. I accidentally hit the bearing and I knocked the bearing off sideways. So basically, if this was the casing, the bearing was like sitting like this inside the casing. So I had to take the mallet and kind of like push the bearing back like this. I think it's okay now. I don't think I have to buy a new bearing at the moment, and so hopefully I got that all resolved. But the biggest issue that kind of halted fabrication last night was the actual design and functionality of the rear suspension arms with the axle. And the issue that I ran into, and it was kind of an oversight on my part, was the fact that, so we have this, so how the axle was set up was you have 2 bearings in the middle with the dead axle, and then on each end of the axle you have a U-joint. And that U-joint is going to be fixed at one point, and then also allows the other axle of the suspension arm to pivot. So we're going to have a 3-axle setup, a moving axle, dead axle, and a moving axle, one on each side. And what I didn't account for was the fact that when the suspension arm moves, so you have like this distance right here. So this is the distance from this bearing to the U-joint, and it was fixed at the bearing and fixed at the U-joint. But when this changes like this distance gets shorter, just the way math works and geometry and stuff like that. So this distance gets shorter, and because the axle was fixed in place with the bearing and fixed in place with the U-joint, it wouldn't allow the suspension to move. So I had to kind of rethink a little bit. I had the help of my dad, and he kind of helped me think of a new way to go about this, because what I noticed was when I moved it, the wooden dowel rod wanted to slide in and out of the bearing and the U-joint. So what we came up with was, I went ahead and got some 1 1/4 inch outside diameter by 1 inch inside diameter steel tubing. And then I also went ahead and got some smaller 1 inch outside diameter steel tubing. Now my plan is to use a 2-axle or 2-axle like sizes for the whole axle system. And basically this axle, this is going to go inside of this. And at some points on the axle, this will be welded here, and at one point where it goes to the bearing, it's going to just allow it to slide. So when it changes, it can slide in and slide out. And if that makes sense, I hope you guys understand it, because it's really hard to explain without actually showing you guys, and I don't have it built yet, so I can't really show you physically what I'm talking about. But that's my plan right now. So I've been just cutting sections of that 1 1/4 inch tubing to mount inside the U-joint, bearing, and the hub, because the hubs and the U-joints and the bearings I got all need 1 1/4 inch, and so those pieces inside there have to be 1 1/4 inch, and then that 1 inch will just slide in that, and then it'll allow the axle to move and slide when the suspension pivots. So enough of me talking. I'm going to go ahead and get into some fabrication, and basically what I've been doing is just grinding down the 1 1/4 inch pieces that I cut, because for some reason they're a little bit bigger than 1 1/4 inch. I don't know if it's just the way they're manufactured, but I've been having to take my angle grinder and actually just grind it down and get it so it fits inside the bearings. Okay, so I was doing some fabrication on some of those pieces that I just needed to create for the rear axle, but I actually just broke the grinder wheel, the little carbide wheel. A chunk flew off the wheel as I was grinding, and it was kind of expected because the grinder wheel was pretty old and I was using it for a while. So I have to go get one of those later, but for now what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to weld the C brackets for the front spindles onto the front suspension arms, because the reason why I want to do that right now is because in order to size that 1 inch piece of axle in the back to see where the tire is going to sit in the back, I need to see where the tire is going to sit in the front, because I either want them to be even or I want the rear tires to stick out farther than the front, because if the front stuck out farther than the rear, it kind of looked weird, so I don't want that to happen. So I'm going to go ahead and do both sides now. So what I was doing was I was just kind of measuring and finding the halfway point on the spindle here, or not the spindle, the C bracket, and then I'm going to go ahead and just kind of place it on here and hold it on and tack it on for the moment, and then I'll go ahead and do all the finishing welds a little bit later. It's kind of tricky because I have to make sure this is straight and also square at the same time, or else it won't work well. Okay, so I think that was good for the first amount of tack welds. I'm going to go ahead and finish it up. It isn't perfectly centered, but I'm okay with that. I'll just adjust it so it's the same for the other side. Okay, so I just finished welding on both C-clamps to the suspension arms, and I had The one on the other side went okay, but this one right here, the first time ooh, that's still really hot. The first time I did it, the C-clamp was a little bit crooked, and so I had to grind off the welds and then redo it again. But the second time I did it, it was perfectly straight, and it's centered this way. So it's working pretty well. So and the reason why I did this is just because I needed to get an idea of where the wheels are going to be at in terms of the front end, so I can space it out a little bit. So it's coming along well. Okay, so I think that's going to wrap up this video. I have a lot more fabrication to do that I'm going to actually record now after I take a little break, but I don't want this video to get too long. So I'm going to go ahead and split it up into the next video for the rest of the fabrication that I'm going to do today and also tomorrow. So I'm really excited how far I've gotten with this so far, and my goal is, as I said, to get a rolling chassis by the end of this weekend. It's Saturday afternoon right now. So I think that's going to do it for this video. I covered quite a bit in this video, and if you guys have any questions, again, please feel free to leave them in the comment section below, and I'll be happy to answer them for you, whether they're about the go-kart build, about cars, whatever you want to ask. Go ahead and leave them in the comment section below, and if you haven't already, go ahead and subscribe to my channel, because there are many more awesome videos to come with this go-kart, and you'll definitely want to be subscribed for when the videos come out, when this thing actually starts functioning and moving and driving. So I'm really excited once that time comes, and but for now, thank you all for watching, and I hope you have a good one.